So, you directed a lot of our favorite episodes, and the series really shifted once it came back to LA, and there were
Yep.
a lot of funny episodes, a lot of different episodes, and two of which you directed, being Dreamland 2 and X-Cops. X-Cops, Lauren and I were talking about how much we just adore that episode. Uh,
Right.
can you tell us what these episodes were like for you? I mean, approaching them as a director. I mean, they're totally different than a typical X-Files. How did you approach that?
Well, the cop one was different. Let's do that. Bad boys, bad boys. So it 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 was inherently different from putting your socks on to the putting your hat on. It was redressing a show in a way that has never been done in production. And God gifted me with Bernie and Harry. So uh, we were all sort of uh, not going to let it beat us, because the show was always such a challenge, and it was such a novelty, and there was such a special aura around it, that it wasn't like, how do you put it? When I'm producing and directing and stuff, you get guest directors and they come inside, and it's a real concept. And even Chris Chulak does the same thing. He has a metaphor that's exactly the same, just not a square. He does a circle. And you tell the director, look, stay in the box and give really good notes. And inherently, you're going to be incredibly successful. Don't try to make your reel. Don't reinvent the show. Don't do it. But what would happen is they would put something on the page that sometimes was so wonderful that there was no box that could capture it. We would have to go find a box that would fit it. Like when Chris directed on the Queen Mary, I mean, I was constantly, I tarped the boat. I tarped the Queen Mary. I had 4 generators just to get rain up on top. You had to sort of rethink how a show works. And so when we did the XCops, it was fun, because my thing is not, oh, what a problem. My thing is always about solutions. And I think that's where we focused on the show. I really think that was the inherent solution to how we kind of pulled stuff off. And when one of us would go, oh, this is nonsense, this is crap, this isn't, the other would keep, making us sort of climb the pole, as it were. And so we just went out there. We watched a couple of these shows so we wouldn't get too ensconced in exactly what it was. And we just decided to divine it. And we made a really nice contact. That was the one thing about the show. I had the fire department, the governor, the penal system, the mayor, the ATF. I had LAP. I had everything sort of as a reservoir. Everybody realized the economics of putting the show in and how much fun it was to actually participate in something so unique. Like first, doing a first is always the best. So we made a really good relationship with them, and we just went out with the story, and we sort of, kind of by, a little of this and a little of that, found neighborhoods and put ourselves in positions that I can't believe we were going down such dangerous neighborhoods, running with cameras and people and police. I mean, these days, I'm sure one of us might have been shot or something. I don't know. But we had an effects crew that's second to nobody. They traveled around in a couple of 40 footers. So we were making things on the fly. We put a car on a spit so that when the car gets turned over and everything would happen. So what we did is we created inside the camera, which I think it lends itself to the reality of why the show is so successful. There was less to do about visual effects and faking it, and more to do about truth and how we filmed it. And I had a friend, Steve Stafford, and he was an accomplished helicopter pilot. So I had him make that run down Lincoln Boulevard, which is, to this day, they would probably shoot us down there too. So, but we decided, oh, what the hell, there's nothing like, better to ask for forgiveness than it would be to ask for permission. So we did it, and it was hysterical. And we got a little better every day. And by the end of the show, we're all humming bad boys, and singing and meeting on crack corners and terrible neighborhoods and going through terrible houses. And it was pretty skeevy, but I have to hand it to David, you know, when I think about this stuff in retrospect. I don't know what I love more about David, if he's a writer or an actor or a director. Like when we did the Unnatural with him, and
Favorite.
yeah, and he can do the camp stuff, you know. He can do serious stuff that has comedy so honestly that it comes across. It really was genius, you know, when he's telling her to cowboy up and everything. I mean, it was really hokey, but he just makes it all happen. So, and the other thing about this show is that I really love is that we didn't dwell on stuff. If we had an idea and we did it once and we didn't repeat it. We didn't keep going over and over and over, because I feel like you anesthetize the honesty of what you're doing. Take one on that show was always the best, because everybody sort of talked about what we were going to do, and then you went and did it, and you really got to see everybody's participation. So it was very good, you know.
I mean, I lived in a very shady part of North Hollywood. Do you remember? And it looked very similar. Do you remember where you guys shot? I know I read this
We
somewhere.
shot a bunch of it in Venice, down in Santa
Oh,
Monica,
yeah,
and Venice. Yeah,
pretty skeezy down there. Yeah.
yeah, we would. Yeah, there were lines of debarkation, and literally the police would have to run with us sometimes. So, but it looked right. It was right. So we did it. It was honest. So.
So when I was reading that when David was filming his first episode, The Unnatural, he was directing his first episode.
Yeah.
You were flying from the shoot in The Unnatural to Vegas, where
Yeah.
they were shooting Three of a Kind. What were you doing? What was that about? You were just how did that all pan out? Like, did you sleep?
I don't remember sleep. It was I will say this. I think the best thing I ever did was the crew I hired when they came to Los Angeles. I hired everybody but Downey Waselis, who was the stunt coordinator, and Kim hired him, and he turned out to be the brightest, shiniest diamond. And I have to think that most of the people I hired, they're like-minded, and we're finishers. We're here to perform and to get it done. And so I think that's the way it was. And Bernie was my producing partner, and we just decided that it was going to be successful. And if it required me going back and forth, that's what I did. So I never got a room there. I just kind of slept on a car or the plane whenever I could. And then I got back to Ontario. But, you know, I have to tell you something about David. It was like, you know, I mean, he took it more seriously than most people do. And that prep was, it was inherent that I be there. And I really enjoyed that. You know, I'm not like the godfather, the fairy godmother. I'm nothing, but I really enjoyed it. And I was kind of the guy that walked behind their kid, you know, telling people to move and not lock their child in. And, you know, and we chatted about it. And I mean, we plowed a hillside to create a baseball field, for God's sakes. And he directed it through a 100-year rainstorm, and an actor went down we had to go back, and we took great pride in finishing on time. And an actor went down, and we had to go back and redo that at the beginning, you know. And then when we were on those baseball fields with guys and alien heads and baseball running around, I mean, you know, David needed support there. And I was the producer there, and I had to leave Bernie to protect the groups just politically in Vegas, because just the scrutiny that was happening in the casinos and things like that. So it was just important to go back and forth. So that's what I did, you know.
Which actor are you talking about? Darren McGavin?
Yeah,
Oh, he had a
yeah,
stroke, right?
yeah.
Right before the show.
After we did a couple of days, yeah.
Oh, you had done. I didn't realize you had filmed.
Yeah, we had filmed, and then he had a medical problem, and so we had to start again.
I mean, well, I love how it ended up being, how David ended up changing the story to be the brother or whatever. That ended up, I think, being very interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was great, and I thought David did a great job. And there was a lot of ad-libbing, and I mean, you know, for a seasoned director, it was a challenging show. So
Yeah.
somebody coming in, you know, and carrying uh, so much gravitas, you know, and he's David, and he knows he's going to get looked at 9,000 windows of scrutiny, and even with within the own camp, it was going to be looked at. So, you know, I mean, I thought it was really a lovely show, and he was more than generous. I mean, to the crew and the gifts, and I mean, I like David. To this day, we talked. I actually a few years ago had to do a horrible scene with a young girl for Blacklist, and um, I read his daughter, and I was there when she was born. It was so great, and she was brilliant, you know, and it just broke my heart that she might get the part because it's such an awful role. You know, it's like, no, but she was great. I mean, absolutely great. So
She ended up playing his a friend of his daughter in the finale. Was it, Lauren?
I
The
don't
friend of
know.
his son in the finale. Yeah, she was
The
on.
reboot finale. The
Yeah,
reboot
I'm sure. But I remember when Taya was, when they were due, and Taya was in a hospital, and we're hiding. I'm hiding that, and then David said, "I gotta work. I want to work," and I'm like, "Okay." So I scheduled him, and then Melanie calls me and just rips me, like, "What the fuck is he working for?" I'm like, "Look, you know," and I don't want to give everybody up, and it was. Yeah, I just put her on speakerphone and kept working, let her like errand stuff, and but he needed to, you know, and so I was fine with that, you know. I mean, and I have to tell you, hiding them was, you know, was all part and parcel. I'm sure there were other people involved, just the fans, because they would just track him down. I mean, I had the stages cleared sometimes because people snuck in, you know. They burrowed a hole up to steal some props out of the box. I mean, there was a clearing. When we first got there, I sent out 2 or 3 cars at night that were the same cars. They thought it was David, and then he drove home, you know.
Wait,
That's interesting. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because you were working on the height of its popularity. Can you
Yeah,
tell us a little bit more about that?
yeah. I think the show was showing 32 times a day worldwide. Or I'm not sure of the number, but it was unbelievable. So people were trying to get on the lot, and literally we swept stages. You know, we'd go up into the perms, make sure. I found somebody burrowed a hole and was getting into the prop cage, and they have these wormholes under the stage because we had built tanks and everything in there. So, you know, we just did due diligence, and then people were outside the gate, and I don't want him to know where he lives, and also Gillian lived near me as well. I mean, it was just kind of serendipitous that I was like in the same vicinity with them, you know. So I would send out a few cars, and they all look like David. And you know, you've seen David stand-ins. It's frightening how a couple of them look. One kind of looks like he's being electrically charged if he walks, but his face double is perfect. And so we would give him a ride somewhere, and people would follow, and then David could go home. You know,
that's
I mean,
insane.
it was really hard for a little while. You know, it was very, very important to keep him safe. You know.
How is what I'm just like trying to figure out, like, how did they know? Well, I understand the studio, but you guys were on location a lot. How did
Well, we started at Fox a lot, and the first show was really, you know, we built a tank. We had a 2-story set above ground and a tank underground. I mean, we really threw anchor there, and I literally changed the traffic pattern because I had so many trucks. I mean, people were giving me the finger because I was taking so many parking spots out, and just so because I was losing an hour a day just getting my drivers in and out of the studio because they had to one way in all the time, you know.
that's crazy. And I mean, I
It
remember.
was a city on wheels. I mean, literally, if I'm not mistaken, if you parked all our units on the street, I think we took over a mile of curb.
And that was because you had 2 units. You just had that much
So we
stuff.
almost had 3 at times, you know. So I mean, and they were full units. When you talk about my B unit, I was multiple cameras and cranes and SF trucks and so many logistical things, you know. And then I gave David golf clubs
Oh,
because I was sick of him. I don't want to sit there and wait. I figured he didn't either. So again, golf lessons and golf clubs, he would go across to Rancho, and those were the pagers, and I'd page him. I made a deal. If I page you, you got to come back. And he was really good about it, And then Harry got some bad deal on his show, and we plugged him in. I mean, we built our crew. I was really proud of the crew. I don't think we could, I didn't do anything. I mean, the greatest thing I did was hire somebody here and hire somebody there, and, because then they meshed together. And
That's amazing.
I mean, it was really a lovely group, and it's like a city, and somebody's a jerk, and there's worker bees, and there's this and there's that, but that's just the way it works. And they all supported each other so that it was a real group.
Any specific memories that you could share with us about working with the producers or Chris Carter or some of the other?
Well, Chris is really interesting. I mean, I would never say, and strangely enough, I lived right where Chris lived. It was so strange. I would go down to the same surf gate to go in to surf. And I dated a real estate woman so I could get that private key. I mean, it was a big gate. So we broke up. Where's the key? I said, I've lost it, Mom. I don't know where it is. So, and I can't imagine the pressure on Chris, having made such a phenomenal mega hit, because I mean, you got to know how the show got made, right? I mean, Chris came, I think Chris might have been living in with Hawaii, and then was it Elliot, what was it, Bodner? What was the name of that group? There was an agency, and I think it was Elliot, somebody, and Fox was starting. I think they might have had The Simpsons. So this is all foggy stuff, but they took X-Files, and they made it. And I think Chris ran it with James Wong. I mean, a couple of guys, really good producers the first year. It was probably difficult and everything. But no one was really watching Fox. It was like live scripted television, is my guess, So essentially, my feeling is Chris really got a couple or 2.5 years, maybe, of programming where other people get some and then it goes to reruns, right? So Chris got a lot of programming, but it was picking up, like, it was like, it was that little engine that could. And people who saw it, like, that's it, that's their show. I mean, they were abducted, as it were, into viewership because it was so compelling. So finally, it had so much talk about that when people turned it in, he had at least 50 shows that people hadn't seen. So he could run the show and keep running. And everyone was like, oh my God, oh my God. It was new every time. And his shows, I don't know if they would have made like CBS or NBC or anything like that, because they were so interesting and they were just so unique. And what I think brought them on was, they didn't have some silly little silver alien model all stitched together that everybody could see. They threw something through a black stage and no one can see it, and it scared the hell out of everybody. And that's the success, I think, of that show, was that they found out how to circumvent what they thought they were supposed to do, and they did something really special. You know what I mean? Then they started inventing the perfect alien, and it wasn't the same. And, they go up and they talk to John Bartley, who was my gaffer. And then they say to John Bartley, light it dark. And John's like, yeah, I can do that. Like, it's not like normal TV where they put a lot of light on, he's like, there you go, and he gave them dark. So the secret was there, and no one really knew how to do it, and Fox was able to transmit it with that integrity, where a lot of people have an iris and it brightens up. We would always have our negative with a real white line on two sides so that the iris couldn't turn. So the blacks would stay black, and that's sort of how we did it technically. And so Chris obviously manifested this wonderful show, and then there's no doubt about it, I think the linchpin in the whole show is Vince and Chris. And there's just no doubt about it. I mean, I remember laughing with Chris about a few things, you know, like saying, wow, do you need a talking doctor or something? This is a weird show. But he was so great and so quiet and so within himself. Like, I loved his office. It was the dark desk and the dark couch and the dark wooden blinds. And do you know what I mean? And he kept it all at this really wonderful rhythm and pace and stuff. So I really loved his conviction to it. But then you think of that guy, and he's done like probably one of the biggest hits ever done of all time. And he probably inwardly thinks he's supposed to have a second hit like that, but that's just completely distorted. I don't think you possibly can, you know? And if he suffered, I don't know, from that, I would wish him not, because that's wasted eggs when I mean, this is a monument, you know? This is a great, great thing. I mean, we celebrate Lincoln for emancipation. He doesn't need to do 10 other things, you know? So Chris did X-Files, and I mean, that's just a pretty complete life right there, you know?
Why do you think the show is still so relevant? I mean, we're talking about it 28 years later from the original pilot. Why do you think there's like kids that are 10 years old at these Comic-Cons obsessed with the show, just like we were when we were 10?
Well, this will break your heart. So's Grey's Anatomy.
Don't get me started on Grace.
No, but you see what I'm saying? So I think there's a theme there that they really stitch character tightly up. And so I think where Grey's may deal in relevance now and stuff like that, the serialized and everything, and the X-Files deals in the paranormal and the supernatural, or what could be, always the questions of what could be. We all deal honestly, both shows, and how they affect it and stretching beyond what we do. So where Grey's, they may have an affair, or you see them kill a patient or whatever it is, there's something inherent about dealing with the fear and the tragedy and the truth and of going forward, and they've done it. And I think in X-Files, the characters are so wonderfully fleshed out. And then now they're dealing with everybody's fantasy. So I think that's a little bit of the hook to it, you know. Also, it's a shared show, and don't get me wrong, I found love late. I've got a son now, and so you sit and you watch with your kids. When a parent and a child can watch the same show and have equal enthusiasm, it's a really good thing. So I think, you know, when they show the show to that kid, it's something they've never seen. I'm telling you, it's a one-off. I don't see anything ever like it. And I don't, you know, they did Buck Rogers with, you know, sprinkler in a rocket, or whatever you call it, you know, sparkler in a rocket or something.
Michael, it's our last question. We ask everyone that we've had the pleasure of speaking with. Before I ask you, I do want to say I love your poster in the back.
Yeah, I was going to make a comment too.
I see that poster.
You know, that's the only thing I kept from the show. David signed it. That's my love.
Nice.
I love it. I love it.
Our last question for you is, do you have a message for the fans that you would like to share? What's your message?
If you get to the end, don't tell it to the person who's just starting. If you ever get the chance to shake David Duchovny's hands, don't stare at him. Just talk to him like a normal guy. There you go. I wouldn't know what to say to him. I probably have something to learn from everybody who watched it, you know.
I'm going to throw in another question. Do you, of all from the time you worked on the show, do you have a favorite episode that you worked on, whether you directed or produced?
I had moments, like I had a resounding success helping Chris with the Titanic.
Triangle, yeah.
Yeah, you know, we got Bryan Cranston on Drive right at the top. I helped change some lighting and adapt to it, but it was keeping them out of the muck, you know. I liked doing the cops. It was fun because it was different. My least favorite was the sewer monster, Fecal Fred.
Yeah, that was gross.
So, but I had many laughs about it. I was such a poop about it, and I don't mean that as a metaphor to it, but we would. But I would sit out there with David wearing his pink polo shirt. I'm going, oh my God, David. So, but we had a lot of fun with it because it was really camp. But honestly, I think when you know, they had a torch and they all the aliens came down and touched all the people from from Canada so that we could start fresh with actors. It was really liberating. But there was just, from a producerial standpoint, I would just say the friendship and the kinship, you know.
That's
You
awesome.
know, Steven Spielberg took me to do a pilot from that show, and it was an important pilot, and they picked it for mid-season, but he thought that was wrong, and it made me feel sad that we waste time doing that, you know. If it was going to go, and it was a good one, he should have let it go in the mid-season, and there would have been a certain amount of worth for it, you know. But it kind of took that from us. Bernie and I did that anyway.
Michael, you're awesome. Thank you.
No, I'm not. You're the best. Thank you. Enjoy. I'm glad it's going down for perpetuity of some sort of journaling, you know, and getting, you know.